Red Bull, up until Miami, they were dominating in F1. Then they had a precipitous fall. Now, we know that after Miami, they had to take out their asymmetric gauge because the way Max drives is asymmetric. He throws the car into the corner and puts more emphasis on the front of the tire rather than the back. And if you put too much emphasis on that, it's going to cause the front tire to degrade too much. If you have the asymmetric thing, it redirects the balance asymmetrically with the front tire, and it sort of by doing that, it puts displacement forces and balances the whole car. As soon as I left, there was a balance problem. I don't think that's enough to explain the whole decline of Red Bull, where they were winning by 20, 30 seconds. Then all of a sudden, the rest of their teams fall apart. What I think is going on is number one, track conditions, continual changes in regulations, the asymmetric thing also, but also it's not just that the Red Bull has gotten slower. The rest of the teams have gotten faster, especially McLaren, because they've been focusing on balance. And Red Bull also had some aerodynamic issues because they have an old wind tunnel, and also they had less aerodynamic time this year. So all of these things brought a decline. Also, the leaving of Newey,
Adrian Newey.
and also the problem with Horner. So their personnel was in disarray. You don't have Horner, you don't have Newey anymore, you don't have your asymmetric. And also the ground force this year seems to be weird. Teams don't understand why they can't predict their cars, except for McLaren, which I think has been focusing on McLaren has been focusing on balance for probably 2 or 3 years now. And they don't make too many crazy upgrades because they're playing it conservative.
The problem with Red Bull was managing the successes of 2023. The
Yeah.
predecessor to the RB20, the RB19, was hugely successful. And so the question was, what next? What else could you possibly do for the RB19 to make it possibly very, very good and maybe a step, higher? I think they overdid it with all these asymmetric things,
Yes.
and it led to a lot of
Yeah.
counterproductive results.
Yeah.
They somewhat overdid it because if you look at in 2023, they had an excellent season. I think they won 19 out of 20 races. And then they were like, okay, for
Mm.
2024, how far do we push this car? But I think the pushing was a tad too much and it
Yeah,
affected
and
so
sorry to
many
interrupt.
things.
They changed
Yes,
their side pods, and then they also changed their floor height.
no
And
height, yes.
even Perez and Verstappen and were surprised that they did it. And Newey said that he wasn't in agreement.
And I think it was in Miami that they first noticed that there was a problem and everything started to fall apart because the balance issues that we're now experiencing now started to show in Miami. And people started suspecting that maybe,
Coincidentally, that's when they took the asymmetric device out. So that's still a big issue. Continue. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it was at Miami that all these things started, to to show up. And like you rightly
Yeah.
mentioned, the side pod is a very intricate element of design that shouldn't be tampered with, excessively.
Yeah, they tampered
Because
with that. That was a big mistake.
it affects the extreme aerodynamic balance of the car so much, as well as the diffuser and a lot of other, subtle uh, elements of the car. So it had effects on drag downforce as well as the drag. So I feel they pushed it too much, where the likes of Mercedes and McLaren just made a little bit, just few tweaks to ensure that they could maintain their momentum.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think Red Bull pushed theirs a little bit too much, and it started to
And,
affect
and here's
their
Yeah,
steadiness.
and here's what I think happened. Red Bull changed their concept. So now that they changed their concept, the other teams were still behind at the beginning of the season and were losing. But the other teams were basing their model on Red Bull's concept from 2023. And now
Yes.
Red Bull made the mistake of changing their concept, which is why there was a lag in time before you saw the other teams catch up. So like week one, week two, week three, Red Bull was winning. Cut it short. Red Bull
Yeah.
changed their concept in 2024 and changed their floor height and their side pods, and it wouldn't be clear that they were going to start struggling because the other teams were far behind. But the other teams were working on on the concept that Red Bull had the year before, and we're catching up to them. And after a couple of weeks, we could see that. But we still have to say that the asymmetric device played a part in it. So I think it's a multiple factors that led to the downfall of
Yes,
Red
yes.
Bull.
Yeah, basically multiple factors. One that you have mentioned before, that their rivals have improved significantly, particularly McLaren with their supercar. Then secondly, there was something I researched on about tire pressure, that the tire pressure too may have impacted the balance of the car.
Yeah,
Higher tire
yeah.
pressures can lead to changes in handling characteristics of the car. And I think this is one of
And
the
Red Bull was pushing for more tire pressure. Yeah,
yes, and Red
yeah.
Bull was pushing for more tire pressure. So improvements from rivals, Mercedes and McLaren, the asymmetric thing, as well as trying to improve the previous car too
Yeah.
quickly and in a very high measure. I think it was
Like losing Nui.
and losing Nui. I think was the aggregation of all these factors that
And they've
affect.
also lost some other people,
Yeah,
engineers and
sure,
stuff, going to other teams.
sure.